an Unspoiled Network podcast.
This is Spoil Me, covering Cradle, Book 6, Underlord, Chapters 6, 7, and 8. In these chapters, picture it, Denison, Texas, 2020. And I am walking to the gym. And as I'm cresting the hill, almost reaching the main road, I realize that Orthos is saying he's leaving. And then I just start crying in the middle of the street, alone, by myself. Welcome to Spoil Me. Welcome to the show, everyone. I am Natasha. Thank you so much to Andy for commissioning this, but also, fuck you, Andy. I hate you today. I really do. I can't tell you guys how sad that was. It was like, there have been actual deaths of characters that I love that I haven't reacted as strongly to as Orthos taking his temporary leave. Like, we're told we're going to see him again. It's not even like we're acting like it's permanent. We know we're going to see him again, and he's alive, and yet it doesn't matter. I was devastated. I really was. Like, the way it was written was so understated. Like, y'all, I'm just tearing up thinking about it, and I'm not going to talk about it anymore right now. I do not need to talk about it right now. I'm getting all choked up. Brian's in the chat says the narrator's emotion boosted that scene to 11. You know what? It's true. I cannot, with this audiobook narrator, pulling it out at really surprising times. He's quite good. And there are times where a narrator can really bring scenes to a new place. That happened recently in Battleground, which is the latest Dresden Files book, where there was a scene that was like upsetting in its own way anyway, and then the narrator just made me fall apart. But, oh God, I think the reason that it bothered me so much is because I know it's not a death and it's not permanent. So it's much more relatable in an immediate way. You know, it's not like we don't lose people in our lives. It's just when you are just simply saying goodbye to a person, even if it is temporary. We've all been through that like multiple times. There's nobody who hasn't had to like either leave a place with people they care about or watched a person leave a place. And I think that's part of it is like, as you get older, the bittersweet thing about saying goodbye to somebody in a situation like that is simply like realizing how you take for granted you're going to see them again and how rare it actually is for that to work out the way that you plan in the moment you say goodbye. You're thinking, oh yeah, I'll be able to fit in a trip to see you at such and such time. And sometimes it does just work out and it's great. But I will never forget the first time I ever met Owen. We had been talking for a couple of months and I finally came to meet him in Texas for the very first time. And we had like a week and a half together. And, I left to finish, like, moving out of Philadelphia because I had just split up with my husband. And Owen told me after he dropped me off in the airport and waved goodbye as long as he could until I was past security and he couldn't see me anymore, he went back to his car and just broke down in tears. Like, he said he had never cried like that because he thought for sure we were planning to see each other again, but that he wouldn't. He was just really thought we have this whole idea of what's going to happen and it's not going to happen. He was like positive. And now we're getting married and it's great and it's fine. But that feeling is just, when you get older, you just start to realize how many people that mean a lot to you really still you can think of right off the top of your head that you haven't seen in at least half a decade, if not more. And so the fact that the fact that I didn't really see coming that this, like, there was an inkling that something major was going to shift with Orthos because of his advancement, but I didn't see him leaving the story while it happened. So I just was not prepared. That's what I'm saying. But I'm going to back up because you know how I get. I just take too much time on things. So let's start off with chapter 6. It turns out that pillar of darkness was like transporting them, a spatial transmission. And we get a little info from Dross that when Northstrider first tried to develop transportation gates to and from Ghostwater, everyone he sent into them died. They just blew apart. Even the slightest error results in messy, horrible death. And he's just really like, this is just fascinating, isn't it? Meanwhile, poor Lyndon can't feel or see or smell anything. And it's just like, what is happening? He's not warned. That's what it is either. So he has a nice moment of like really keeping control of his like reaction to this because he's holding little Blue in his hand. And when he can't feel or see, he realizes that his instinct is to like grasp, and that what if she's still there and he simply can't feel her and he just grips and fucking crushes her. So he just like forces himself to like be cool for a second. And it reminded me of driving on ice and how they tell you not to stomp on the brake because then you just fucking spin out, which is something that people in Texas could really like learn for themselves. I would like it. But yeah, just the idea of just not panicking and immediately like doing the most dramatic thing is probably a good message for all of us in life. But anyway, so they wind up in this valley that is shrouded in darkness. And he says that clouds swirled in a slow vortex over the entire valley like a hurricane, with the glow of purple lightning most intense at their center. Lyndon had to assume that was the night wheel. Listen, you guys, I say this all the time, but I'm going to keep saying it, evidently, so that's how that works. I want to see this on film. A huge lightning storm in the center of a hurricane, and the lightning is purple. It sounds so rad. So there's this like huge castle. The Eastern Mountain was absolutely covered by what looked like one massive castle of black stone. And I love that later on, what is the name of the other clan? Seishu? The king has made his own like big castle to try and be impressive. Seishin. Thank you, Andy. And it just looks so like kind of pathetic in comparison to this big one. And it's like, yeah, you might have done better just building a house, man. Maybe just don't try and act like you're part of this. So don't act like you're part of this is just good advice for that king, because listen, he hasn't gotten the memo. Ugh, we'll get there. So essentially we have this moment of everybody realizing that they are in a place filled with treasure that is going to be swarming with people soon. And they get to be here before anybody alone, which is amazing. And Mercy explains that this is one of her family's properties and that she doesn't live here, but it's where she trained, which is super interesting to me because it implies that people apparently like do live here, which seems crazy. And let's see. Lyndon says, does that mean in the house? And he's talking about her mom, but like not saying her name because Mercy's hinted maybe your mom can hear when they just say it. And Mercy says, maybe. My mother doesn't live here, but she visits from time to time. Her presence lingers. I am fascinated by Mercy's relationship to her mother, and we're going to talk about what she says to Lyndon a little bit later. So, essentially, there are two major advantages to this location. There are all of these naturally occurring treasures all over the place that are worth like a lot of money and also worth a lot for cycling and advancing. Then there is the fact that the aura density here is much higher, which is really interesting. Ethan says that the Black Flame Empire has such a thin aura that reaching the peak of true gold becomes difficult, which makes me so much more irritated even with the Sage of the Silver Heart's fucking attitude problem when she was talking to Emperor Juan, and it's just like, oh, I know about your disadvantages. I'm like, bitch, apparently just where you live is a factor. Shut up. Anyway, so they split into two groups, and I love that Lyndon is the one who's like, all right, we're going to split into two groups. We're going to cover more ground. Orthos and I should be separated. Closest sources of treasure, clean them out, send a signal. Then we'll assign new hunting spots, the whole thing. And then he stops and he's like, oh, I'm just taking over. And he has all this confidence that's just immediate. But as soon as he realizes what he's doing, it falters and he shrinks a little bit. And oh my God, I felt that in my fucking spirit, you guys. I am somebody who winds up in leadership positions, and I am somebody who always has a plan. I love plans. And as I've grown, I've just realized that's not super common. And that's not to say that I'm like better than other people, but there are certain things I'm better at, and organizing and getting a plan together and putting people in places for that plan is one of those things. And yet, especially for women, that is not encouraged a lot of the time. When you try and take charge that way and assign things to people, it is taken a certain way, especially as a woman. And so you just kind of crumple the second that you realize it's happening, because you feel like you feel bad. Like people are going to think that you're full of yourself or bossy, which is the fucking like worst possible thing to be apparently. And I just related so hard to him immediately taking charge and then losing his confidence like out of nowhere and just kind of being like, unless anybody else has another idea. And like, I love Yaren's like, she just says straight up, like, obviously the advantage if you are this kind of leader is that there aren't a ton of you, so you don't often wind up butting heads with people. It's a thing that you do, but honestly, the number of people who have those sorts of qualities aren't common enough that you wind up in a group with other people who are more than willing to just follow instruction. And that's totally valid. There are times where I also come into that point of view. Oops, somebody's at my door. Whatever. So personally, I have never really like actually come up against a person who's been like, well, who are you? Almost always people are like, all right, sounds good. Let's do that. It's just, they don't overthink it the way the person doing the thing is overthinking it sometimes. So yeah, and Yaren's a perfect like example of that. She's just like, yeah, okay, perfect. So Yaren assumes that she and Lyndon and Mercy are going to be in their group and that Ethan and Orthos are going to be in another. And it turns out Ethan wants her to come with him, which I'm not entirely sure if there was anything specific that he wanted to do, if it was just because he wanted to talk with her about the Blood Shadow thing. I think that was probably most of it. But the Blood Shadow thing is so funny because she's basically like listening to her Power Up podcast that's telling her how she's gonna, how the options for advancing the Blood Shadow later. And the one dude who seems to have done an amazing thing in creating what amounts to a complete copy of himself, like same thoughts as well, is a bad, bad man. So she's having a hard time reconciling the fact that this sounds like the more badass option of like those available to her, but also one of the only people who's ever accomplished it is a real piece of shit. And I completely get it. It is really hard to separate the art from the artist, they're sacred artists, right? Like, we've been here. So I really love that's part of her struggle, and it makes total sense. I also love the fact that Ethan's basically like, he was only like the most advanced, powerful person in that line of that field, essentially. But, what does he know about it? And he's real sarcastic in here, and it's like, that's not the problem. And that's not the problem. It's not like I don't think that it's a badass thing. It's just what you need to do to get there maybe is terrible. And she doesn't trust that Ethan wouldn't make her do terrible things, or that at least the Blood Shadow would demand it of her. And I think she's still worried about containing it. So anyway, we have that happens later, but I may as well just talk about it now. Also, I think it's interesting. She's watching Ethan like pick mushrooms, and they're just floating. They're not like, he's not touching them. And she finds, I can't remember exactly what it is that leads her to figuring it out, because she's thinking that this is like some sort of Madra technique. And she's like, that doesn't line up though. And it's soul fire that he's somehow managing to use to do this, which I don't feel like we've seen that before from anybody else, like using, like not having to touch things and having them come to them. But I might be wrong. It's such a like kind of basic magical thing to summon an object to you without touching it in so much fiction that if it did happen before this and I just didn't notice, I wouldn't be surprised. So Mercy's walking around with Lyndon, and she's talking about the valley and the way that it's so old that and that so many huge events here have left these like permanent marks because of the aura being as dense as it is. So she says, this is where the Nutaru family tried to storm our house, believing that the family of shadow artists living there was just a myth to keep them off the land. Their remnants are long gone. Now it's filled with death aura. And it is a wild thing to just say, oh yeah, now their remnants are all gone. Like they're all just dead. And later on, when we see like the death aura, it's literally tiny skull shapes, which you would think is really corny, but I think is really cool and sort of silly, but in like a way that I like. It's very funny. And the way that they summon it is using this spear that's like attached to a scripted chain or a rope cable. And because like the death aura is so dangerous, especially if you are below Underlord, I believe, that nobody wants to actually go down there. So this is like how they collect it, and then they can just pull it back, which is really a neat idea. So she pulls that spear back, and there's this moment where he's about to like pull the objects off the spear, and she says something about how I'd activate it at a distance, and he does it very like, he does it immediately. And by the time she suggested activating it at a distance, it was too late, and the tiny skulls were already tumbling to the ground. How did you do that? Golds can't get too close to death aura. The life aura in your body reacts automatically to protect you. I wish I could take a closer look at you. I've never looked at your lifeline before, but it must be thick as an oak. And this is when Lyndon realizes that the life water must have made him more resistant. That's super interesting. And also, I think this is the first time we've heard about the lifeline. I don't remember if we did hear about it with Jai Daisho. We may have. But it gets referenced again later, and with the Seishin king being basically held at gunpoint. But yeah, I thought that was interesting. And also, we have this thing with Mercy where she kind of tells Linden what's going on. Like, not in detail, but she begins to open up a tiny bit. And she says that, like, a lot of the treasures are stalled in a vault, and Linden's like, well, can we open it then? And she says, well, it actually is, but I've been cut off from family resources. Although technically they're not allowed to help me, so they would be the ones. No, I can't. This is Aunt Charity's property. She wouldn't notice the loss, but she doesn't tolerate cheating. She only allows a break in her rules in order to keep things fair, or if she thinks it would bring enough of a benefit to the family. So that, like, comes up again later with these dream pills that they wind up taking. And she refuses hers and is really cagey about why. She's insisting. She sort of hints that, like, I should probably wait to read it directly. If she were to take it, she would have to return home. And Linden's kind of trying to just be like, you wouldn't have to. What do you mean? Like, we wouldn't make you go home if you don't want to go home. And I know what it's like to not want to go home. But it seems like there's more going on there than what he thinks. So she is kind of refusing to use any of these resources to advance. And I don't know if that's, like, a point for the, like, whatever the conflict is with her family, that we're trying to get her to advance without using this stuff, or I don't know, but everything that she starts, like, collecting that's helpful for advancement, she's giving away to him and Yeren, and he knows he should be grateful, but he's also low-key like, what the fuck? It's starting to annoy him by the time we get to that. And also I love Linden lets her see Harmony's weapon, the axe, in his soul space. Not soul space. In his, void key. And he doesn't want to say out loud about what happened because he can tell that she's worried about overhearing and whatnot. And she just says that she understands. And when she sees the weapon, like, you know, you want it in battle, that's fair. Nobody's going to take it from you or be mad that you have it. And if they want it, they'll just ask for it, but it's not going to be like a thing. And then we see him use that shit later, and let me tell y'all, that's fun, and I can't wait. So we go to Yeren. She has that conversation with Ethan, which I feel like I pretty much went over. Oh yeah, here it is. There's more than one tablet, you know, because she's just listening to the same one over and over. And this is when we hear Ethan say, don't be so grim. You sound like you're facing down the end of your life, but you're practically starting it again. How many years do you think that what life well gave you back? A century? 2? And this, like, I thought really when I said that I believed there was going to be some effect for him that was different than everyone else. What I kind of wondered was if he was going to lose his connection with Linden somehow. And that he was regretting that because, like, they've become buds, you know? And I wasn't sure if maybe, like, once you advance past a certain stage, you don't have that bond anymore. But it doesn't, like, it seems as if even if he goes away, wherever he's gone, Linden will still feel him somehow. It doesn't seem like distance has as much of an effect as one would think. I do think it has some, though. So, I am not going to talk about the options open to Yeren. I'm really trying to watch my time here. But I suspect this will come up later. I'm just going to, like, mention the like, one sentence. Most common was feeding her blood shadow primarily with mud bladra, usually in the form of scales. It would still leach from her a little, but would eventually become little more than a mass of easily controlled blood madra. And the sage that she's listening to is very contemptuous of this and the next method, which is feeding the blood shadow with actual blood. The shadow would absorb power and substance from the blood, eventually taking on monstrous form. Now look, I'm going to ask the question. I don't know if this author didn't think of it, or if he did, and she was just like, I'm just not going to do anything with that. What about on her period? What does blood madra in your system do when you're menstruating and there is blood literally pouring out of your body? Does that matter? Does that do anything? I want to know, because I feel like if I were her, I would pick the second one, because I'm just going to have that steady old supply of blood coming in any month. Like, no problem. That's done. I don't even need to worry too much. Actually, that's a great, like, way to use it, because blood is just kind of a waste. Like, when you're... Menstruation, to me, is one of the biggest defects in the human body in general, and in my opinion, menstruation is proof there's no God, because no being would be like, oh, that's an elegant solution to the problem. So all that blood is just getting literally flushed down the toilet, and if you could feed it to a blood shadow, that would be pretty good. Moon cup, take care of it, all done. So yeah, I don't know. I think it'd be a good idea. And then the third option is the clone. 2 sages, 1 body. And Yaren's like, I don't want to give this shit a mind of its own. I don't like that. And I'm like, I don't blame you. That sounds pretty fucking scary, honestly. So they come back to basically home base, and the portals are open and there are people everywhere. And it basically is like a city that has sprung up here, like another, like a nation even. And everyone is sort of overwhelmed at the way this has moved, I think. I personally wasn't thinking about the fact that people would arrive with their family. I thought that it would just be the one person by themselves to train and, you know, I kind of expected, actually, now that I really, like, put words to it, I expected something kind of like what the Ghostwater, like, 10-year competition looked like, where you send your one person and just sort of leave them on their own to figure it out. And I didn't realize that, like, this is itself so casual in that you can train if you feel like it, rest if you don't, do whatever you need to do with your people in your space. I expected it to be a bit more like a boot camp. And I like that it's not, because I was sort of like dreading that a little bit, but, it would have been interesting. But Fisher Gesha is here, and Ethan wants these things that he ordered from her. She's in a very bad mood. I really enjoy her a great deal when she's in a bad mood. And she wants payment from Ethan. And he gives her like 1 scale, and she's like, 4, remember? And Ethan's like, oh, right. And I'm like, do you really forget how much you owe? Or are you just like low-key hoping she doesn't ask? What are you doing over there, Ethan? What's going on? Is it just rich people don't think about money? Is that how that is? Because I feel like he should be at this point. We've seen what happened now that he's been cut off from like the supply that his family's got. Maybe just be a little bit more aware of that. I'm just, you know, it's really remarkable though. If you are somebody who has grown up without money, to be around a person for whom money has never really been a major issue. The way their minds work is like a fucking mystery. They may as well be an alien. It's just such a different whole attitude towards the world. So they gather round, and he tells them about these heavens drops, and they don't look super like exciting, but he says they need to be catalyzed with a soul strengthening elixir. And I love this so much. Mercy looked around. Oh, did you bring the elixir too? I've prepared some, Ethan said, to the best of my limited abilities and resources. Alas, the supply of truly great elixirs in the Black Flame Empire is non-existent. I would certainly be grateful if someone had a soul-strengthening elixir of a higher grade. If only someone had access to a substance that strengthens and refines the soul. Like, dude, okay, we get it. And I love Lyndon just being like, fine. He thought he had kept the Void Key secret. And he hadn't. Ethan knows about it all and knows what he's got with him. This led me to think maybe Ethan knew about Dross. We see later, no, he didn't. That was so satisfying, and I love that Lyndon appreciates the satisfaction of that moment and really sits back and is like, oh, that was good. I liked watching that. Lyndon says that he promised it to Yaren, and Ethan's like, will you allow me to use it? I assure you, we will be maximizing its benefits. And she says, just so you know, I'd contend that Cassius had a good point. It really scrapes you raw dealing with somebody who always knows best. It's true. It's true. And that person can't ever really completely help being at least a little smug about it. You know? And so let's see. Yeah, this is when he says, because, you know, Lyndon's kind of frustrated here. He's been frustrated with Ethan in general. This moment almost pushes him over the edge to just being like, you can be kind of an asshole. And Ethan says, but now let me just say, you've really exceeded my expectations. Strengthening your body must have been really painful. And I can see that you pushed yourself. And I couldn't be more proud of you. And also, you've quickened your mind, which I had like a plan for how to do that. But I can believe it when I saw you move. That is like unheard of for a gold. That's super rare. So, goddamn, but we're ahead of schedule and I didn't expect that. And then Lyndon's like, wait, Dross? Has he not scanned you? And Dross says, I don't know. I can't tell. So, he's mid-sentence. Once you reach Underlord, then your real training can finally... With a gentle effort, Lyndon pushed Dross out of his palm. The spirit manifested, one-eyed and purple, and raised one of his stubby arms in greeting, which I just fucking love it that he's just like waving, like, hey, hi, sorry to interrupt, but I'm right here. Lyndon imprinted Ethan's expression of pure astonishment in his memory forever. Oh, that's a win. That's one of those rare, pure wins in life where you're falling asleep and you're needing to think of something that made you happy. And that's a thing you pull up on replay. And Ethan just says, I had no idea. Even now, if I couldn't see you before me, I would have no idea there was a spirit inside him with a fully formed consciousness and Madra system tied to... His eyes widened, and he slowly shut the box of heaven's drops, setting them to one side. Tied to his brain. He waved frantically at the bustle about him, and he asks Fisher Gesha to clear the area, to which Fisher Gesha starts to throw him an attitude. And he literally gives her all the money he has and or can produce to get her to cooperate right here. It's such a good moment. And she kicks everybody out and he tells the whole story. And Ethan is just like, dude, this is only the beginning. This little guy is going to get really fucking badass. You are going to be an absolute maniac. So this is fucking awesome. I can't even believe our luck. This is insane. And he is genuinely a little bit scary in this moment. Like, Lyndon's kind of just trying to be cool and excited also, but he's just like, whoa, dude, chill a little bit. So, We have the heavens drops. We have the moment when Mercy says that she isn't going to take hers. She looked over to the east where the massive castle took up the entire horizon. I can't accept this. I would only have to admit my faults and return to my family, and my mother would shower me with resources like this. I can't take a treasure from you to preserve my pride. Which I was like, what does that mean? Like, why can't the is it her feeling like it's too easy? Oh my God, is she a communist? Is she complaining about the fact that they have access to stuff and she doesn't want to advance because of that? I would love it if she was kind of trying to be like, I don't need y'all's money, but I don't know. I'm so curious. Okay. So finally, Lyndon takes it. And he really expects, because his pure core, which had been high gold, advances to true gold. And the black flame one advances to the very brink of Underlord. He thinks that he's going to get the second one to advance his other core, which honestly makes sense. I was kind of surprised that he simply expected it, but I did not, it does make logical sense. However, Ethan gives it to Yaren for her blood shadow to take. And I thought that was really wild that it can consume it separately like that. And I don't know. I'm really curious. I'm assuming that Lyndon's going to be able to level up his other core easily here. But I did find it funny how Yaren lets her blood shadow take it and then sort of thinks that she might regret it later. And Ethan says, I don't think you will, but you are going to need to keep more of an eye on it, basically. It could cause it to act up a bit, which I never like that sort of, future telling. It just is so ominous. Ugh. I worry about Yaren. That's all I'm saying. So this is when Lyndon's where'd Orthos go? Why is he being so weird about this? Because when it's Orthos' turn to take one of these drops, heaven's drops, he's not excited about it. And there's this resignation to him that Lyndon can feel and doesn't understand. So then we have the scene that I'm hating so much. Ugh. Orthos is projecting here what's about to happen, but it's clear that because he doesn't want to know, Lyndon's not picking up what he's putting down. Lyndon says something about how we're not Underlords yet. You will be. Don't pretend you don't know it. Even if you wouldn't fight tooth and claw, even if you wouldn't fight and claw for Underlord, by now Ethan would drag you there whether you liked it or not. Once you've started to ride the tiger, it's harder to stop. And Lyndon's like, why do you keep saying you? You're here, and you just took one of these things. What's the deal? And all of a sudden, Dross comes out of his soul. And Lyndon's like, what's happening here? And Little Blue chirps. And it's like they know also. Orthos blew a long cloud of smoke into the air, watching it drift up. Sacred beasts advance differently than humans. Lyndon's discomfort advanced to full-blown alarm. Why don't we head back to camp? I'm not sure what happened to Mercy, and Yaren is probably finishing up cycling by now. Humans have to discover what drives their souls to action, Orthos continued. It's the spark that starts their transformation. Sacred beasts do not have to discover who we are. We have to choose. And Lyndon asks if he can choose to become a dragon, because that would make it easy. He's trying to be, lighten the mood. And Orthos says, which I assume is agreement, or a turtle, or even a man. Traditionally, this involves a journey alongside others making the same choice, but I am the only one. Until only days ago, I convinced myself I could make the journey alongside you. But you move so quickly, and I am, after all, a turtle. And Lyndon's still in the middle of being like, yeah, but we have so much time. It's going to be fine. And Dross is already saying goodbye, which is really like, there's something about Lyndon holding on like that made it even like more painful to see that Dross immediately knows what he's talking about, and whether or not that's because he has information and knows literally, or because he is simply accepting what Orthos is clearly saying here right away. I don't know. But either way, Lyndon being like behind everyone else in really comprehending what is happening just was so hard to read. And Orthos says, I won't be gone forever, a few years, but by that time, I expect you'll have left me far behind. You guys, I think that was the line where I started crying, where it was like, I'll see you again, but it's never going to be like this again. And that's the part that hurts. You would really think that I would be used to crying on camera would spoil me, because it happens a shocking amount of times. But, ugh. So he asks where he will go. And Orthos is just like, lots of places would love to have me. And Lyndon's trying to hide his tears. And Orthos says, a dragon is not ashamed of tears. And he puts his arms around Orthos' neck and just cries. And then Yaren shows up, and she's looking at them like really upset. And she says, bleed me, but it looks like you're trying to sneak off without me, she said. And Orthos says, I would not dare, which I really liked. That I would not dare was a really good answer. So, that's that. And I hated it, and it sucked. Ugh, you guys. Anyway, on to chapter 8. King Dakota is a real heel piece of shit man. I don't like him. I don't want anything to do with him. I just want him to die suddenly or something. And the thing is, Kiro isn't strong the way that I want him to be strong, where I think that if his dad died, he'd be able to pull shit out and be okay. Like the nation would be okay. I don't know that I have trust in him or faith in him to pull that off. That said, this man has really created a monster with his other son, Daji. What this guy has done, and this is something that any parent out there, I wish I could slap and shake, that does this. It's so classic, but it's so obvious to everyone around you when you do it, and you don't see it, or you think it's fine, I guess. He has pitted these two against one another, and Kiro is reasonable. Kiro hasn't been affected by it in the same way that his brother has. That's not to say he hasn't been affected. There's no way to be the child of a man like this and not have it make an impact. And when I said last episode that Kiro is going to struggle with cowardice, I failed to understand just how abusive his father is. And so the cowardice, like that word, it comes with this connotation of being, out of self-preservation in a selfish sense. But in his case, the cowardice was self-preservation in a literal, like, life or death way when there's a child who's at the whim of a parent who is stronger and bigger and controls everything about their life. And this is when you learn to retreat out of a sense of simply wanting to make it through to the other side. And so Kiro's struggle with standing up to his father now has taken on a different tone for me, where it's not just, I want to make my father proud, or I don't want to make him look bad because he'll be mad. This man is obviously willing to harm his kid in some way. Like, it feels like whether he would actually physically hit him, it doesn't feel out of the question that he would. I'll just say that. It doesn't seem like that's something he would simply, take off the table. I don't know that that's what's happening, but it certainly feels like Kiro wonders if that's going to happen, because when he's physically menaced by his father, he backs away from him, physically moves away, because it seems to me he expects some sort of physical confrontation. And that sucks. And the fact that Kiro has remained as level-headed and compassionate with his brother as he has, considering how he could have made his father happy easily by agreeing to this, like, competition his father has put him in without his consent, basically. He could have simply been the shining star that his father wants, completely willing to outshine his brother for this approval from his father. He could have chosen to take advantage of the situation in that way and done it purely for his own, which would have been honestly more cowardly, really, And instead, he chooses to look at his brother with compassionate eyes and sees, yes, a kid that is always spoiling for a fight, because he's constantly being told that he is weak and not good enough and an embarrassment. Not everybody could keep that in mind if they were looking at a person who was always had this sort of really, like, aggressive, what's the word I want? When somebody is combative, not everybody could keep that in mind dealing with a person like that. It's something that you can, like, know in your way, but constantly being able to pull that to the front of your thoughts and remind yourself not to lose your temper with somebody or to buy into the narrative that you're being sold in this moment. That's a lot harder than it sounds. It's shocking how hard that can be, actually, to keep in mind. And Kiro's managing to do it, which gives me faith that he could become somebody that could run this place. And I would be like, I feel like that's in his future potentially. But this whole scene, his father has the fucking map out of Nightwheel Valley. Let's see. In the heart of the castle, Kiro faced his proud father in horror. His father laughed uproariously, slapping the crude map of Nightwheel Valley. "We cannot attack." And he says, "Why not? We have the chance to drive the Empire out entirely. All the sacred grounds of the valley would be ours." And Kiro's, like, kind of thinking for a second, is he too stupid to get why this is such a bad idea? But then when he pushes and says, like, the sage might not like this, his father has a really considered answer, actually, and says, the sage has been willing to let people take it as far as they can until real innocents become victims. In the past, He says, Akura Charity pitted our kingdom against the Winter's Blade sect. While blood was spilled, she only intervened when they started to kill our children. She accepts a measure of bloodshed as the cost of competition, but we can't weaken the Black Flame Empire too much. That she would see as an affront to the Akura clan's authority. So Kiro's kind of like, fuck. It sounds like you've thought this out. I still think it's a really shitty thing to do. I think that's really more the thing. He keeps trying to frame it like it's a bad idea. And the thing is, I think he knows it's a good idea if you're a bad person, you know? And that's the frustrating thing, is there's not a lot of like actual logical argument that he can put up. All he can do is try and hide his moral misgivings and frame it as if it's a logical problem, but his father has an answer for it every time he brings up a new question. And, you know, it's just really like when his dad is like, it'll work. Kiro's like, I mean, yeah, it'll work because nobody is expecting somebody to do something that fucked up, basically. Yeah, I don't. And also, here comes Daji, who says, don't be a coward. The sage needs to see our overwhelming strength. And the king says, this is a matter for lords. And Daji says, I have no... And I would have liked to hear what that sentence was. I have no blank. I'm like, where was that going? But the king screams at him, your brother managed to advance where the aura wasn't a tenth as strong as it is here. Can you not handle even this much? And Kiro defends him when he walks out of the room, even though his brother looks at him like he would like Kiro to immediately keel over and die. Kiro says he's trying his hardest. And Dakota doesn't even answer him about that. He just moves on with the conversation. So again, I really appreciated that Kiro like tried to stick up for his brother. So finally, in the end, he says, but it's still a gamble. And this is like one too many times that he has expressed his doubt. And Dakota loses his shit a little bit. His dad stands up and comes at him in a way that makes Kiro want to go for a weapon or his armor. And it says that would only set his father off even further. Guys, if you haven't been in the kind of situation where you are dealing with an abusive, violent person, it's hard to get across the number of ways that you learn as a child how to read the energy of a room and tell what ways you can lessen it, get out of it, anything to make it better. And this moment of him knowing certain things would set his father off, it's just like, that's something that you learn with experience. And I hate imagining what that experience was like. And his father is looming over him. And it says, on Kiro's successful attempt, he had spent most of the time terrified of his father's reaction to failure. Kiro privately believed that it was fear of his father that had pushed his soul forward. And that is just so devastating in its way. That sucks. And it said something about, like, you know, later on we find out what drives you to perform the sacred arts is part of what helps you advance to Underlord, because you need to know that about yourself. And I believe that is sort of Kiro, like, came to realize the truth, that he does this to please his father. And that's the truth for him, which is just really tough. Nothing in life, like, if you are coming at it from a healthy place, should be based on trying to make somebody outside of you happy. It's just an unsustainable way to live. But most of us grapple with that a lot. It's not something that you can entirely avoid, I think, like, just as a person. but you have to like unlearn it as you get older. So at this point, Dakota says, tell your gardener that everything is all right. And Mira, the badass gardener woman, who's got the gray hair with the pink flowers in it, which is the coolest gold sign and sounds so pretty, and I like it. She has a fucking green scythe flame blade to his throat. Wow. This bitch is up here threatening the king without a qualm. She's not trying to hide who it is doing this. She's not trying to do like a sneak attack to it. Like, this is just, oh no, we're not doing that. You are going to step away from my man Kiro and calm yourself the fuck down. That's what we're doing. And I was like, bitch, who are you? I want to know about her so bad. Oh my God. And fucking Kiro is like, oh yeah. And she absolutely would do it too. Like, I am not even, this isn't a bluff. She knows that she's got the advantage here. But even when he comes between her and the king and puts it in them both in such a position that the king now would have an advantage and be able to crush her, Mira still doesn't really back off. It's just like, and so she has this just profound loyalty to him. I don't know if it's romantic or if there's something else going on, but either way, he knows that really that's the reason that his father hasn't killed her already. Like, if he were to die, Kiro, he believes that his father would kill Mira right away. I'm trying to find the spot. Let's see. Yeah. The king stood with his spirit veiled. Now that she had been separated, his father could kill her with little effort. Oh, yeah. He would kill her, but she'd take a piece of his lifespan with her. She's so good. I want to know about this. So he also knew if anything happened to him, his father would have her executed within the day. That's the spot. And Dakota says that the attack moves forward. While the rest of us push forward, the two of you will be headed here. It's where our scouts have seen the Black Flame Boy. So, I only have a couple of minutes left, but thankfully we're almost at the end. I did better with my time management this time. Lyndon is cycling and meditating and attempting to advance and find his reason for practicing the secret arts. And he isn't succeeding, and he's getting very frustrated, and it's clear Orthos leaving has really fucked his whole head up. It's just, he's being short with everybody. He's just in a bad place. He's gone through a loss, and it has been hard. And it's really telling about who Lyndon is as a person, that he's going through this with Orthos, but he didn't really go through this when he lost his arm the same way. You know, it was certainly, he was like resentful of it and the way that he had been played, but he moved forward quickly. And with losing Orthos, it's just a whole other, you know, this is his partner, man. They were bonded. And he's just clearly got some rage about that. And he says to himself that he like is wanting a good fight to get it out of his system. And somebody saw your choice from the menu, took your order, and they're coming back from the kitchen, Lyndon, because guess what? You're about to get exactly what the fuck you want. So enjoy. So yeah, now follow that sensation back into yourself, deep into your soul, into your mind. Now, tell me why. Why do you practice the sacred arts? To protect people, Lyndon and Yaren said at the same time. Lyndon braced himself, straining to detect any change in the soul fire inside him or the aura outside. What was supposed to happen was a transformative resonance. And it's not working, and he can't understand why, because as far as he and Yaren are concerned, they are being absolutely honest about their motivations here. And they've tried all kinds of combinations and different ways of saying it, and none of it has worked. I love Yaren had run down a few very different paths. So I can do what I want. To get revenge, because I enjoy it. To get stronger. And she had sensed nothing. Well, with Yaren, we know it's because I don't want to be left behind, really. With Lyndon, I would have thought to protect others would be the thing. But maybe it's just I don't want to be as weak as I used to be. I don't want to be at the mercy of other people. Like, because we've seen him go through that. Or he doesn't want others to be, like, I don't know. But I really would have thought that would be the one. And that is apparently not it. So I am really excited to find out what that is. So Lyndon walks off finally after like kind of throwing a fit and getting really irritated. And Dross is picking up on a communication from his Skysworn armor. And he's like, emergency message, they're under attack, muffled screams, if you please for help, then a lot of sobbing. And I'm just like, oh, I didn't think it would like start this soon. Okay. So he goes chasing out, and there's this dude who is saying to a woman who's in Skysworn armor to call him here. And she says, we can't. The shadow aura is too thick. No one can hear us. And we find out shortly that it's Lyndon he's telling her to go and call. And she's lying to protect him, which I don't know if, like, it will ever register for him later. How, like, that is a kind of a significant moment that one of the Skysworn, who he is sort of seen as seeing him as an enemy, is willing to die lying to save and protect his ass. And honestly, I really like found that a little bit touching because of how far he's come with that relationship with the Skysworn. So Dross, like Lyndon's like, Dross, I need a battle plan. And Dross is like, okay, but he hasn't used any techniques. I can't do that yet. And Dross says, this is not likely to be an isolated event. This looks like the Satian kingdom pushing against the Empire. And Yaren would fight here, Lyndon said to Dross. Good, then let's call her here. While we watch her fight, I can compile a combat solution. I like that plan. In fact, watching the Underlord kill all these other people will give us some great information. So finally, Lyndon steps in, and it's like basically he asks Dross, do I have any chance of winning at all? And Dross is like, you have a little bit of a chance. It's super small, but it's there. And Lyndon's just, all right, fine. And he like decides to step up. Tells the high gold boy, take your true gold and run. And it's the woman that he isn't certain is still alive. But, you know, he's just trying to give her a chance. If she had told me she'd called you, I would have let her leave, the man said. I'm the Satian Kingdom's first prince, Satian Kiro. And Lyndon's like, oh, fuck. And then he says, you must be Lyndon. And Lyndon's like, oh, fuck. He doesn't like that this dude knows his name. Evidently, he's drawing too much attention. Not a fan, which I think is the correct reaction to have. And he says, in the name of justice and with an honored witness, I have come to punish you. Oh no, he's here for justice, Dross said. You're doomed. Which honestly, that does have a very foreboding sound to it. And then Lyndon says, oh, guys, this is so good. Lyndon squared his shoulders, holding the axe before him in both hands, and cycled black flame. His eyes burned. Ready yourself, your highness, Lyndon said. Ah, what a G. I swear to God, he's so polite, and he's about to go up against this motherfucker and is just straight up being like, all right, I'm about to come at you. Let's do this. And he's just so upfront. Ready yourself. Ah, I love it. I can't wait to see what happens. He wanted a fight. You are about to get the fight of your life, Lyndon. This is like, we know that Akora Charity has said she doesn't want him killed, right? Nevertheless, I don't know what she does want, really, in the end. And, she's watching in her owl form, and he pulls out fucking Harmony's weapon. What is she going to think of that? Is she going to be like, yeah, figured you had it? Or is she going to be like, you motherfucker, I can't believe that you have that shit in your hand right now. Like, I really don't know what to expect. I figure it's what Mercy said, but what Mercy says is the way people would react and the way people actually emotional react are not the same thing. So, and also, I don't want him to die. I feel like the only way that Kiro doesn't die is because Lyndon doesn't have to die for Harmony, or not Harmony. I forgot her name. Sacred Heart. Silver Heart. If she doesn't need him to die. And so Lyndon won't necessarily be like fighting for his life. Charity, thank you, Andy. But he doesn't know that he's not fighting for his life. Exactly. Like, nobody said that. So either he picks up on it in the way that they're fighting, or he is fighting to kill Kiro. And I don't want Kiro to die because he seems like a potentially good dude who could do something, it would be pretty awesome. If Lyndon beats him and Kiro's like, what do you want? And Lyndon's like, how about you become one of my buds? And then they just like go and kill Kiro's dad. I would be down with that. That would be good. I'm over time as usual. I gotta go. But this was super interesting. I can't wait to find out what happens next. And I'm super sad about orthos and I will never recover. So there's that. So thank you guys again so much for hanging out with me. Thank you to Andy, who's in the chat. Hi, Andy, for commissioning this specifically. But thank you also for being in the chat. And thank you to Brian. And thank you to Andrea. Oh, I didn't even see Andrea in here. Ethan's awesome for allowing him to grow in that way. Oh, yeah, with the giving the orders and stuff. Yes, agreed. Sorry, Andrea, I didn't even see you in here. But anyway, I am so excited to see that the chat is like getting more activity. Maybe it means that there are more people like starting to read these who hadn't been. Fingers crossed. Anyway, I'll be seeing you guys on Friday with a new episode. Until then, toodaloo, motherfuckers.
That was an Unspoiled Network podcast.